Hey everyone, welcome back to Homemaking with Rebecca. Today we're making one of my favorite things to make and to eat, and that's homemade cinnamon rolls. So this is a favorite recipe of mine. We don't eat it a whole lot, but we definitely have it for special occasions, especially Christmas. That's one of our favorite things to have for our Christmas morning meal. So I will make up a batch of cinnamon rolls the week of Christmas, or potentially even a couple of weeks ahead of time. The great thing about bread recipes, especially like cinnamon rolls, is they freeze really well. So you can make up several batches at once and put a couple batches in the freezer and then kind of get them out when you're ready to eat them. This is a really fun recipe to make. It's fairly easy. So this recipe comes out of my breakfast recipes cookbook. I have a link to that in the description below, and you can download this recipe book and print it right away. It's got 30 plus recipes of some of our favorite things that we like to make and eat for breakfast. I'll also have the recipe in the description below so you can find that. This is going to be our cinnamon roll recipe that we've got in here, and this recipe was written for all-purpose flour, and so if you're just using white all-purpose flour, you can use it just like the recipe says. And then I have a note over here for if you're using einkorn flour. I'll be using all-purpose einkorn flour. So einkorn tends to absorb moisture a little bit differently, so you kind of have to adjust the ingredients, but I have the recipe for both of those just depending on how you're making it. So this recipe makes about 12 cinnamon rolls. I like to put mine in a 9x13 pan like this. That's how I make them. Like I said, you can double this recipe, make 2 pans, stick one in the freezer. If you don't need 12 cinnamon rolls, you could make these in like pie pans or something like that, and put them in the freezer and then just pop them out when you need them. So we're going to get started on putting our yeast and our honey and water together to get that going, and then we're going to make our cinnamon rolls. All right, I've got 3/4 cup of warm water here, and then we've got 1/4 cup of honey. Get all that honey in there. So you can make cinnamon rolls with just a regular bread dough recipe if you want to. I've done that many times. Like I have a Einkorn yeast bread recipe. You could use that and just make it into cinnamon rolls, make one of the loaves into cinnamon rolls. But typically cinnamon rolls is made with a brioche dough. And so, some people call it an enriched dough. And so it's going to have like honey and butter and eggs and stuff like that in it to just make it a little bit more sweeter. So we're going to put 2.25 teaspoons of yeast in here, or if you're using the packages, that would be 1 package of yeast. And this is just the active dry yeast. And so you want to let that, mix it up maybe just a tad and let that sit for 3 to 5 minutes just to kind of get that yeast activated. So our yeast is getting activated. We're going to go ahead and get ready to put our other ingredients in. So I'm going to go ahead and crack this egg. That looks good. So that's going to go ahead and go in. And then we're going to do 1/4 cup of melted butter here. And it's been sitting for a minute, so it's starting to get solid again. But it'll be fine. So then we've got 1.5 teaspoons of salt and 3.5 to 4 cups of flour. And you're just going to kind of see, you're going to put in 3.5 cups of flour, and then you're going to kind of see as you're going if you're going to need a little bit more, because it's just going to depend on a lot of different factors onto whether you need a little bit more or a little bit less flour. You want this dough to be sticky. It's going to be a little bit sticky, but you don't want it overly sticky to where you can't really work with it, or it's just kind of a blob and it's not really holding together. And if you're going to do a lot of bread baking, I would highly recommend to get something like this KitchenAid mixer. I have had mine for 20 plus years now, and we've had to replace one little like $3 part in it, but other than that it has worked great. And so this is just kind of a smaller one, but there's lots of other stand-up mixers that you can look into getting if you're going to do a lot of bread. And because I love that this kneads it for you. So this is our dough hook here we're going to put on, and it's just going to knead it for me. Especially with these really sticky doughs, it helps to have something that will knead it for you so you don't have to do that by hand. So we're going to get that all mixed up, and then I'm going to let it knead for about 5 minutes. and we'll just kind of look at it along the way to see if I need to add any extra flour. Sometimes you have to go in and scrape that down a little bit. It's kind of all coming together in like a ball, and so that's really what we want. We're going to let this knead for about 5 minutes on here, and then we'll come back and check it. So you can see this is about 3 minutes in, and it's kneading nice there. You can see how pretty and yellow that dough is, and that is from the Einkorn flour and also our nice farm fresh egg. Our dough's been kneading for 5 minutes now, so I'm just going to scrape this down off the dough hook, and then we're going to cover this bowl and let it rise for 1 hour. So I'm covering this with a beeswax wrap here. You could use plastic wrap, you could use a wet towel, just anything to help keep the moisture in. And we're just going to let that rise for 1 hour. So while we're letting that rise, go ahead and make sure you've got some butter out, and it can be softening. It actually would be good to go ahead and have it out before now. I've got some in my little butter dish here, and it's already softened, and so you need 1/4 cup because you want this butter to be the right temperature for mixing it with your brown sugar and cinnamon, so you can just spread it on your cinnamon roll dough and it doesn't tear the dough. If you had to, you can melt it a little bit on the stove, but you don't want it to be completely melted, like I said, because it'll just leak all over the place. You want it to be softened, so if you can have it sitting out for a couple hours, that works great. All right, so our dough is risen, and now we're going to get to the fun part of putting the cinnamon rolls together. So you want to have your work area all set up here. I've got my 9x13 pan. I'm going to butter that really good. I've got my rolling pin here. My dough's all ready. I've got some flour to sprinkle on my mat here. I've got some scissors and thread. We're going to use that to cut the cinnamon rolls. It gives it a nice clean cut. And then I'm going to make my filling mixture here. So I've got cinnamon, brown sugar, and butter. And we're going to get all that mixed up and ready. That way you can make your cinnamon rolls and cut them out and have everything you need right here and ready. So let's get this filling mixture here mixed up. Like I said, you want to have some nice softened butter here so that we get it the right spreadable texture. And then you want to have 1/2 cup of brown sugar here. And then we're going to put 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm just going to mix this up really good. So we're just going to flour our surface really good here, and then I'm going to get our dough out and we'll roll it into a nice rectangle shape. Here's our dough, nice and risen. I'm going to take some flour, rub it here on our rolling pin, and then we just want to get this rolled out into a rectangle, about a 12 by 16 size rectangle. So here we go. And now I'm just going to put this filling on here. I'm just going to put this filling on here, and we're going to spread it all on. So we got it all spread on there. We're just going to get it rolled up. I've got a little bowl of some water here. I'm just going to wet this dough on the edge so that it'll seal up really good. You could use like an egg wash if you wanted to also. We're just going to start cutting this and getting it into our pan. So I'm going to just cover this with my beeswax wrap again. You just want to make sure it's in a pan that's high enough that once they rise that it's not going to touch them. With a 9x13 pan you shouldn't have a problem, but if you were to put this on like a cookie sheet or something, you wouldn't want to put any plastic wrap on it where it could touch them unless you had it oiled or something. So we're going to put that on there and let this rise for about 30 minutes and then we're going to bake them. So we've been letting these rise and now it's time to pop them in the oven. Look how pretty those are. They rose up so good and they're nice and brown. So now we're going to mix up our icing mixture. I've got 1 cup of powdered sugar in this measuring cup here. And then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And then 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk just till you get the consistency that you want. So if you want it super thick, you can add less milk. If you want it thinner, you can add a little bit more. I like to let these cool for about 10 or 15 minutes and we'll put our glaze on there while it's still warm, but they're not just super hot. And if you were wanting to freeze these, you could just let them cool completely, wrap them in some foil, and then just put them in your freezer and pull them out when you get ready to eat them. So now we're going to give it a try while it's nice and warm. Look how pretty that cinnamon roll is. And I think it's safe to say that these were delicious. I mean, there's just really nothing much better than a warm cinnamon roll, especially if you pair it with something like some milk. It was super delicious, and I hope you try this recipe. And if you do, let me know in the comments. Please feel free to like and subscribe. And I've got lots of other recipes and videos. Check those out. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.